So our first guest is a friend of mine. He's revolutionized the hotel industry by allowing people to book daily, hotels by day.
I love this concept.
Yeah, Yannis Moati. How you doing?
Let's welcome Yannis.
Hello. Thank you very much, Lindsay, David, for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So how did you even come up with this concept, hotel by day?
Yes. So hotel by day is essentially the idea of booking a hotel room for a few hours during the day. The idea is to provide flexibility in an industry like hospitality that is quite rigid, right? Because unless you are a VIP or you've got some status symbol with a big brand, you won't be able to check in before 3 p.m. and you must leave the next day by 11. It's quite rigid. It doesn't fit today's society where we're on demand, on the move. Everything that we want to do, we do it according to our own terms and agenda. And yet hospitality is telling you, no, you landed at 7 a.m., but you cannot check in until 3 p.m. and you're groggy all day long and it's a pain.
Yannis, I'm one of those people who gets off the plane in Europe and I demand my hotel room at 7:30. I am one of those people.
Boy, do I have something for you. Yeah.
So how does it work? So you basically have access to a hotel immediately.
So yes and no. We're one layer of flexibility to an industry that's been quite rigid so far. And so what we do is that we monetize hotel rooms that would otherwise be sitting empty all day long, right? Because even when a hotel is 100% sold out the night before and the night coming, there's about 20% or 30% of the guests leaving very early in the morning and other guests coming in very late at night. So about 40% of the hotel is sitting empty all day long from 10 to 4. So what we do is that we make the check-in starting around 9 or 10 a.m. instead of waiting until 3 p.m. So it's not exactly according to whatever and whenever you want it. We're going to get there soon, but we need to move in, lock in step with the industry in order to bring one layer of flexibility and then move on to second and third and fourth, which we actually are progressing now after 4 years into.
Yeah, there's that open window there. I think that's smart. And that's how you're able to convince hotels to buy into this idea.
Yeah. So we started 4 years ago with the angle of you can monetize rooms that would otherwise be sitting empty all day long. And it makes sense.
It does make
Then
sense.
we realized that actually there's a bigger opportunity out there, which is a customer acquisition. You see, half of our guests live within 20 miles of the hotel that they book. So essentially it's suburbanites coming to a major city like New York, San Francisco, LA, Miami, all the major cities that we're into in the United States. So basically, instead of shuttling back and forth between home and office and then back at work, back at a night event possibly, you could use a hotel room for a few hours to shower, nap, relax, red-eye refresh.
Sounds nice. Instead of hanging out at the hostel Starbucks here in this
Right.
in the city.
Exactly.
They don't even have seats anymore. They're just kind of like, get your latte and get out.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we tell the hotels now is like, you're actually missing out on an opportunity of acquiring new customers that you did not necessarily talk to before. Because a hotel, prior to us, was just selling hotel rooms to vacationers coming from out of country. But now you can sell it to a suburbanite crowd that did not need your hotel for the night stay, but they need your hotel for a day stay. So basically, long story short, to quote a CEO of a major brand, there's 7 billion people on the planet, 2 of which travel a lot, 5 don't. So we communicate to that 5 billion people mass market.
So how have hotels been trying to do this themselves, or are they coming to you for this expertise?
Hotels can do anything on their own if they want to. But left to their own device, they're quite restrictive, you see.
They're traditional, huh?
They're traditional.
These are industries that haven't quite been disrupted, like media's been disrupted by Netflix and Hulu, etc. But hotels are still living in the 1980s. Why is that?
Well, technically, David, they are the oldest profession on earth. If you look on Wikipedia, you'll see that the oldest businesses alive today that started like in the Middle Ages, 3 of the top 5 are hotels. So it tells you it's quite rigid, it's quite structured, it hasn't moved ever since, and technology is now changing the whole game for them. And we're here to support that change.
So in the past decade, we've seen companies like Uber and Netflix really revolutionize the industry. And in your company, for example, along with Airbnb, we're trying to do the same to break through that space. What challenges have you faced or are you facing as you're really trying to make a dent in the industry, in the hospitality industry,
Thanks for asking this question, Lindsay. So the example that you just listed, Uber, Airbnb, they had to essentially convince individual parties, right? Uber had to convince a few drivers or thousands of drivers. Airbnb, a few hosts out there to list their spaces or drive for them. But us, we're faced in having to convince an industry that is quite rigid, quite structured, that went to school with a certain level of behavior, and we're telling them you need to change your behavior. So our biggest challenge is actually convincing quite of a stratified industry to be more flexible. So instead of us going to the individual players, we're talking to major corporations and companies that have been doing the same thing for years. And so therefore our barrier of entry or our, let's say, resistance is the fact that we need to convince people that have been doing the same business for a long time and that don't necessarily see it the way that we see it, the way that we're ourselves familiar with, having everything on our phone and doing everything according to our own terms. They don't necessarily see it like that. But it's changing. It really is. In the last 4 years, we're seeing that now a lot of the conversation is coming to us to ask us questions where before we were like begging, at the door. Yeah.
So before you leave, one last question here. Yeah. We had the founder of Coffee Meets Bagel on a few weeks ago, and she has something in common with you. She was also on Shark Tank and left without a deal. Uh-oh. What was that like?
It was stressful. It was exciting. It was similar to being here, but a lot more stressful. But definitely an experience that was worthwhile.
I'm sure, and great exposure, I would think, for your company.
It helped.
National TV, yeah.
It helped.
Did you get a spike after you were on the show?
Yes, we
did.
did.
You go. So something
the Shark Tank
did come
effect.
Out
it's like the Oprah effect.
And it was a gift that kept on giving because there's reruns. So
you continue to see spikes.
Not as big, but at times I'm like, I remember calling my CMO. I was like, "What the hell happened yesterday?" And then we found out it was a rerun. Yeah, wow. Yeah, it was fun.
Well, continued success to you, Yannis.
Thank you,
so
Lindsay.
much for joining us here on Bold TV.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting.
You're welcome.
Thanks, David.